Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. JLR Investigates. Come on in, come on in. A lot to talk about with the Matthew Perry case. Come on in, everyone. We're going to talk about Matthew Perry, the beloved Friends actor who tragically lost his life October of last year. Was found dead in a hot tub at his home. And was he murdered or was he not murdered? Are charges coming or will there be no charges? And I say this, folks, because there has been recent news reports, ladies and gentlemen, that particularly by People Magazine, News Nation is also reporting this also, that police believe charges should come in the death of Matthew Perry. 54 years old, died too soon. And we're talking about ketamine, folks. We're talking about ketamine. And it looks like, folks, there is some investigations going on with this case right now, and charges might be coming. Maybe on the state level or the county level in Los Angeles County, maybe on the federal level. Central District of Los Angeles, federal government, United States District Court. Now the question is, everyone might be wondering, who would murder Matthew Perry? Was it murder? Or did someone give him more drugs than he should have got? Is there drug dealers involved? Who prescribed ketamine? Where did it come from? Because that's what the medical examiner said he died from, acute effects of ketamine. That's the way I'm reading it. Los Angeles County Medical Examiner. So this is going to be very, very interesting, folks. And I'm going to get Magnolia Investigates because Magnolia has been filed. Magnolia loves Keith Morrison and Matthew Perry. I'm going to get her on because she made a series of tweets back at the stages, the beginning stages of this, and talking about ketamine. I don't fully understand about ketamine, so maybe you guys can enlighten us here. You know, the medical examiner also, the way I'm reading it is also saying drowning too. Was it both? Does one supersede the other? If someone gets charged, will they be able to just use the drowning as a defense and say it wasn't ketamine? But ketamine, where do you get ketamine from? Where do you get this from? So we're going to talk. I'm going to give you the first News Nation report because News Nation has a great report that just came out the last 24 hours. Ashley Banfield, Elizabeth Vargas, they talk about the charges that might be coming. And I honestly think at this point, charges are coming. That's the way I'm seeing it. I'm reading the room. Read the room, folks. Read the room. Do Google searches. Look around on YouTube. Read the room. And something tells me something's about to drop. An indictment and or charges, perp walk, people being identified as providing him drugs. It seems like his father is actually trying to beat the drum to get an investigation. Let's go with this report first.
So let's just start with your reaction to the People Magazine report that we actually might get some arrests in the death of Matthew Perry.
To be honest, I'm a little surprised. The death has been ruled an accident. Ketamine is not illegal. It is used off-label for mental health uses. In fact, Matthew Perry was being prescribed and going through ketamine therapy during his recovery. It is not considered a violation of somebody's recovery to undergo ketamine therapy under a doctor's orders, but that is not what was in his system when he died. He had last had his ketamine infusion many days before his death, and it only stays in your body for a few hours. So we know he procured the drug somehow from somebody. And clearly police, the sheriff's office, the DEA have investigated and believe that they have a case against several people, is what the reporting is thus far, to press charges against them, which is great. But, I loved your opening, but Ashley, more than 100,000 Americans die every year from drug overdoses in this country. And I would venture to say very, very few of the people who sold them those drugs are ever prosecuted.
So that was my point of doing this whole setup with all these very big, shiny celebrity names, that we are starting to see some very big prison sentences. And I don't know if that's trickling down into the non-celebrity names, but are we at a point, Elizabeth, in this culture in America where we're saying enough is enough? We've had it with the fentanyl deaths. We have had it with the dealers running the show. That maybe we're going to start actually bringing down the hammer and putting people away for over a decade. And I'm not sure if it's going to make them think twice or not, but are we at least changing how we look at drug overdoses?
I sure hope so. I mean, listen. Fentanyl is a scourge in this country right now. And we know that the drug cartels are making fentanyl with the help of the Chinese government, which is quietly rewarding pharmaceutical companies to make the precursors and ship them over to the cartels to press pills, and then fled the southern border with these pills. This is a huge issue in this country because it's touched so many people. Nearly everybody has someone in their family or somebody that they know, somebody they work with who has struggled with drug addiction. And it's worth noting that many people, like Matthew Perry, become addicted to opioids initially by being prescribed painkillers for a legitimate, real purpose. Matthew had a jet ski accident in 1997. He was prescribed Percocet. He said he took his first Percocet and he was hooked. I just interviewed on my show 2 nights ago the mother of a woman, the mother of a young boy, a teenager who had major surgery his senior year in high school. They prescribed OxyContin as a pain reliever. She gave it to him. She administered the pills according to the dose. He became hooked. He spent the next 15 years in and out of rehabs and overdosed and died. She found his body on the bathroom floor. And she's now started a foundation to go into hospitals, so there are advocates to help people navigate, painkillers, and so that they don't get hooked. But the point is so many people in this country become hooked on opioids and eventually turn to illegal opioids like heroin or other drugs that then have fentanyl in them because they actually were prescribed by a doctor. We know that Matthew was given ketamine by a doctor. And obviously he liked the effects enough that he got it and procured it on his own and took it when he shouldn't have. It's worth noting, he didn't die of ketamine. He died because he took the ketamine and he was in a hot tub and he drowned. He lost consciousness and slipped underneath the surface of the water. The ketamine itself didn't kill him, but he had acute levels of it in his system when he died.
Going to be hard. Causation is big in the law, and if someone's going to go after people who prescribe or, supply illegally any kinds of drugs, it's going to be an uphill battle in that case.
Well,
real quickly, only about 20 seconds left. But
I was going to say they might charge them with selling ketamine illegally, but I'm not sure they can charge him for the death because of the causality there, as you just pointed out.
And my mind always goes to felony murder. If you commit a felony and somebody dies, boom, you're on the hook. Okay, 20 seconds left. You did interview Matthew Perry less than a year before he died. Just quickly give me the feel for that conversation.
Boy, it was a very long conversation. I did it in front of a live audience. It's a podcast. I do a podcast, Heart of the Matter, for the partnership. Anybody can listen to the whole conversation. He was remarkably honest and candid about his fight with addiction. It is a harrowing story. He spent, he thinks, $9 million on rehab. He was in and out of 15 different rehabs. He nearly died a few years before I interviewed him. He was in the hospital after his colon burst. He really, really didn't want to be remembered for the actor on Friends, our friend Chandler. He wanted to be remembered as somebody who helped other people get clean and sober. And, he did that. There are actors who he helped get sober, like Hank Azaria. Even while Matthew was still relapsing, he was helping others get sober. He opened a sober house in Malibu. Listen, addiction is a cunning and baffling disease. It can get anybody. It crosses all socioeconomic lines, rich, poor, black, white, male, female. You can really be hooked by this. And it got its grips in him, and it never let go, sadly.
I've had it in my family. I know what you're talking about. And I'm just so thankful that people like Matthew and you are so open about it. My executive producer, while you were mentioning this, just said if anybody's out there, they need to listen to Matthew Perro's audiobook as well, because it's a phenomenal account. Really, like you said, very open and honest. Elizabeth Vargas, thank you so much. Be on the show more. Come on more often.
Great take. Ashley Banfield and Elizabeth Vargas. And here's a great point. Like, ketamine, take the ketamine, and then drowned. So I'm not so sure you can necessarily charge, because they said charges are coming. So someone's going to get charged with something. But is it going to be murder, or is it just going to be providing the drugs, like illegal narcotic dealing, which DEA, federal government, yeah, there's some stiff mandatory minimums here. And then also, believe it or not, selling drugs that result in a death, you're not necessarily charged with murder, but selling drugs that result in a death actually has enhancements in these drug statutes. Look it up. So I'm going to get Magnolia on, because Magnolia has been following this case. Magnolia loves this picture right here. And I want to share this picture. This is Keith Morrison. We know Keith Morrison. We like Keith Morrison. But this picture here is very telling here. Just, she thought it was one of the best pictures she's ever seen when it comes to this. But Magnolia put out a series of tweets last November when this all went down. And I'm going to get her take. Magnolia Investigates on here. So we're going to give her a call. We're going to talk. We're going to talk more about Matthew Perry. I'm going to show you the People magazine report. Somebody should be worrying here. And it seems like somebody was tipped off that charges are coming. Here we go.
Hello.
Magnolia Investigates. Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Let's talk about the Matthew Perry case. What's your take?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I saw this unfolding at the time, and I could just tell there was a certain statement that had been put out there about the autopsy. So the autopsy said that he, I have this pulled up on PBS. The autopsy reported that he died from the acute effects of the anesthetic ketamine, and he also drowned in the heated end of his pool, but that was a secondary factor in his death.
Secondary. They said secondary.
That he drowned.
Interesting.
Yes. So, and they were saying that people had told investigators that he was undergoing ketamine infusion therapy to treat depression and anxiety. But the medical examiner said the levels of ketamine in his body were in the range used for general anesthesia during surgery.
Yeah, you're pretty much knocked out, right, at that point?
Yes, and they also said at the time that his last treatment was a week and a half before his death. So his last, I guess, inpatient treatment was a week and a half before his death. So there was another statement made that I had posted a tweet about, it looks like on the day the autopsy came out. I had seen this statement. The medical examiner's report showed Perry had continued receiving infusions in California, with the last infusion about a week and a half before he died. The infusion could not have been responsible for his death. So when I saw that statement, I knew right then that there would be an investigation and doctors would be forced to prove that. Because if you look up ketamine, it does have a cumulative effect in your body. So other similar things that have that type of effect are like Xanax. Over time, it kind of accumulates in your system, and it can take a long time. When you're continuously on something like that, it can take a long time. And so, they're saying that it wasn't due to the infusion a week and a half before So then that leaves us with a question. Then what caused it? Right? So that told me right away there was going to be an investigation here. And, you know, I'm not going to say it's like totally similar to Michael Jackson, but, you know, in his case, the doctor,
Conrad Murray,
like literally gave him this propofol and was administering it and was supposed to be monitoring him, and he left him alone and he died. Now those are all the questions we have here, though. Was he alone that night at the house? Number one. We know that there was an assistant, at least one assistant there, who I believe was the one that found him. So the investigation will involve who was there that day, that night, and yes, where did he get this ketamine from that caused him to have acute effects? And basically what it does is it depresses your central nervous system, so it slows down your breathing and all that. So he would have just stopped breathing and simply drowned, you know. So those are all the questions that they'll have. And it is a fact that his stepfather, being Keith Morrison, is a major factor in this, which is why that's another thing that I said at the time when I saw the picture of Keith Morrison. I knew right then, I was like, somebody's going to be charged with this, because he is someone who, you know, he's an investigator himself. He's got years of experience in this business. He's got endless contacts, and there's even a report on Yahoo News right now essentially crediting him with the fact that this has seen an investigation, because he's got contacts. It says decades of experience dealing with local and national law enforcement. He was making calls himself. And so, yes, he's credited with a big part of this being investigated. So it looks like the charges are coming.
Murder charges? Murder?
Well, yeah, I mean, as someone had said in the chat earlier that, you know, if you provide someone drugs that causes their death, you can be charged with murder. I mean, that's just, Elizabeth Vargas pointed out that it's not very common that happens. And she's right. I don't think we see that too often, but it is a law, and this is Matthew Perry. I mean, you can't just cause the death of Matthew Perry and not expect some huge investigation to come out of it.
Yeah, I wanted to emphasize, you know, because I feel like the way the People magazine report, they're saying United States Attorney's Office in Los Angeles is looking into this matter. So that makes me feel like a federal indictment coming down for maybe dealing drugs. But I do want to emphasize that there is federal statutes. You do not have to be charged with murder, but you, by selling drugs that result in a death, puts the enhancement up on the federal sentencing guidelines. It's a point system, and it can enhance you significantly if you sold drugs to someone and those drugs resulted in someone's death, or you gave drugs to someone, either or. Yes,
exactly. So, you know, that's probably where this is headed. Now, if it's going to be, if this is a doctor who gave it to him, that's obviously going to have its own set of implications, because they're going to have to worry about their medical license and things like that. And Dr. Conrad Murray, you know, had to face all of that. Or if this was just he bought it from somebody, you know, it's hard to know because we don't know all the circumstances leading up to that night. But he definitely, you know, they're acknowledging. This is why I keep bringing this up. They acknowledged that his last normal infusion therapy was a week and a half before. So there has to have been something that happened during those 10 days. And that's what the investigation will be looking at.
Would they be able to determine like the time that drugs were in his system? Like the exact time they were put in?
I think you can. Yeah, I think that you can tell with a lot of certain drugs because of the shelf life that they have and how fast they're metabolized. And so that's kind of how, when they do the autopsy and they say that he died from acute effects of ketamine, they can tell that the level of ketamine in his body at the time was the amount that someone would have for general anesthesia, which basically knocks you out. So they're able to tell the levels, and then based on any other drugs he had in his system and those levels, they can tell based on how fast they metabolize, how long ago he had ingested them.
People are saying half-life in the chat.
Yes.
So was he taking ketamine for depression or anxiety? Why was he taking ketamine?
Yeah, it's a therapy that a lot of people are using now for
the rich?
Managing depression. No, it's a lot of people. I think even some people in our chat mentioned that they know people that use it. So, I mean, it's an approved therapy, and Elizabeth Vargas talked about that. It's an approved therapy for people who suffer depression, anxiety. Now, some people call it an experimental treatment. I don't think that it's like fully mainstream yet, but I have heard a lot about this therapy.
So I'm reading it costs anywhere, and we're talking about an infusion, $400 to $1,200 per session.
Wow.
Oh, it's pretty pricey. I'm looking at the price.
Yeah.
That's why I was just saying, is this a predominantly used by rich people, rich Hollywood celebs, people with money that use this, but you're saying that people from all walks of life use it?
I think, yeah, and I think in the beginning it was more of like only certain people were doing it, but I think it's become more common these days because I do hear about it fairly often on social media, people with their own experiences, and they say that it helps them. So it seems to be a good therapy for the right person. I just wonder, another question that I raised at the time is, yes, it may be a good therapy and it works for some people, but it also has this cumulative effect. And we're talking about a man who, it's been well documented, his body had already suffered decades of addiction. So I would think as a doctor, you would have to weigh those factors and make sure that this is the appropriate treatment for your patient, given their history. So I'm sure those questions would come up too, is, could his body even handle it, for one thing?
Well, yeah, but that's why I'm thinking, was it deliberately given to him? Is that a possibility? Whoever was in that house or someone beforehand, are we talking about a plot here? Because, people are questioning that. I asked that because a lot of people in the chat are saying, yeah, he was flat out murdered. Now, I look to the right to my screen and look Matthew Perry's net worth, and he was worth $120 million. For seasons 9 and 10 of Friends, they were making $1 million per episode, and for season 9 in general, he made $24 million. In season 8 or season 10, $18 million. Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah. So, as far as if someone gave it to him deliberately, my opinion is I always thought it was odd, this assistant who was at the home with him that night and found him. And I wondered if they were someone who was giving him these medications and not monitoring him. Because I always had this weird feeling about the person that was there at the house that night. And also in the beginning, there was a lot of confusion about who was actually there. And I remember there was one person they thought was there, and then later they said, no, it was actually someone else, a different assistant who found him. And so, yeah, that's really what I wondered all along, is did one of those people in the house living with him give him an overdose?
People in the chat are saying she. Was it a female assistant?
Yeah, so he had, Yeah, he had several different assistants over the years, but in the end, I think that there was one in particular who was pretty much always there with him. And yeah, and it was a woman. So yeah, I believe the person was there the whole time, from what I understand, unless she had left for a while and came back. But this person was there, and he went in the hot tub like he did most nights, I guess, and drowned.
Well,
Essentially fell asleep and drowned.
I can't see assistant be in charge if the assistant didn't provide the drugs. Like if you know someone in front of you takes drugs and they choose to take the drugs and they ultimately die as the result of the drugs, you seeing it is not a crime. I mean, you have a moral, I guess, obligation to get help or try to encourage somebody not to do it, and many don't. But it's not a crime if the assistant's there and the assistant never even touched the ketamine.
Well, yeah, not if she didn't touch it, then no, then there wouldn't be charges. But I'm saying if she did give it to him, inject him with it, and was administering it herself or known to administer it to him, that could land her in trouble. And yeah, someone else did corroborate what I said. She did leave and came back. So she had been there, left, and came back later and said that she found him in the hot tub. So those questions, like I said, who was there that night? Who saw this happen? Did he give it to himself? Did someone else administer it to him? And also, how did he even have it outside of a medical office? If that's what the case was, So I just think it was kind of obvious from the start that there would be an investigation, and now it looks like charges will be coming. So we'll just have to wait and see what the story is there.
They're saying, and I'm just reading numbers, in 2020, this is the latest thing, 90,000 people in this country died from a drug overdose. 90,000. It actually jumped. Because we had COVID, a lot of people locked in their house, not much to do. A lot of people got hooked on addictions. People suffered from mental health because of the lockdowns. 90,000 people. But we don't see very often, and we don't hear cases where, people die of drugs, and we're seeing and hearing like many, 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 many people that provided the drugs being criminally charged with anything. I mean, it's you the one that take it. It's your responsibility in a sense. That's how I see it. Now, other people might say differently, but are they only doing this because of Keith Morrison and him being a celebrity, and they're just trying to just act like they're doing something? Or is there some sort of Hollywood insider, Hollywood, drug dealing going on, and the potential of other celebs being brought into this, and it's good for TV, I guess you want to say?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think it's important that this was investigated, and, I'm glad that Keith Morrison took that on, because for one thing, we've been saying ketamine is, a lot of people haven't even heard of this treatment before. I don't even think you really heard of it.
Nope.
Yeah, so it's like, this is something that not a lot of people know about. It's becoming more popular nowadays. And so I think that this should have been investigated just to see really what happened here, because for one thing, it'll help raise awareness on this drug and, really give people insight into what can happen if you take too much of it. And I just think it's important for public awareness, for that factor.
Maybe
also
a deterrent.
Just safety.
Maybe
safety
just a deterrent.
Going forward. Yeah. So, someone said it's a party drug from the 80s. And yeah, I know. And see, that's the other thing. It is being used as a therapy for depression and anxiety, and it seems like a lot of people testify that it helps them. But at the same time, it's also a recreational drug, and so it can be dangerous. So you have to. I just think the public needs to know more about this drug, and so I think it's good that they investigated his death. And when you have someone so high profile like this, that is a beloved American figure, and he suddenly dies from this ketamine, and everyone's like, what's ketamine, or what is this? You know, it's good to investigate it and see what's really going on, because you might be able to help other people in the future. So I see no problem with them investigating. And if they find that someone is responsible for giving it to him in a way that he shouldn't have had it, or something along those lines, then they should be charged. So I personally just think that there needs to be a lot more research, investigation into some of these therapies. And, you know, even people are mentioning in the chat microdosing, which is another thing that people are doing now with mushrooms. These are therapies that are becoming more popular. And I think it's always good to have more information.
Well, you know what I'm grateful for myself, and I just want to make this about me for a second, is I'm so foreign to all this stuff. I don't even know what this stuff is, any of it. I don't even know mushrooms. I never did. I don't do drugs. So I'm grateful I don't do drugs, and thank God I don't do drugs. I'm not knocking anyone that does, you know, because addiction is real and people do struggle. But I'm grateful that I'm not in these shoes to even know about this stuff, though I should get educated, because it looks like there's going to be criminal charges coming here, and we're going to be sharing mugshots and probably getting to know a little bit more about ketamine.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, but it's a case where, you know, investigators, you know, in some ways maybe want to set an example, right? So if there's wrongdoing here, this case will give them the high profile megaphone to kind of, you know, make a big statement. And that's kind of what they did with Conrad Murray, you know? I mean,
well, he got he got about a 4-year sentence, served like half of it.
But he suffered, his medical license and everything suffered on all that. So it's kind of like a wake-up call that just because a celebrity like Michael Jackson is telling you to give me propofol, it doesn't mean that you're legally allowed to do that, you know? So, and, you know, we've seen a lot of these celebrity deaths that they're getting drugs from who knows where, and all of a sudden, you know, like Whitney Houston, drowned in the bathtub. Similar to Matthew Perry. She was drowned in a bathtub.
Rest in peace to all.
You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, anytime you have a high-profile case like this, especially with this, what some people consider experimental therapy, it's going to be investigated. So I'm not surprised that it was investigated, and I'm also not surprised that the investigation is concluding around now. It makes sense to me.
What is about 8 months after?
Yeah, he died, I think it was October 28th, and the autopsy came out December 16th, I believe. So, yeah, so it's been about 6 months since the autopsy came out.
Has any of his friends, co-actors spoke out recently that you know of about this pending investigation or anything dealing with what's about to happen?
I don't think that they have, and actually, on the whole, most of his friends, co-stars, have been very, very quiet since his death.
That is interesting. Worth noting.
And I know that it's because they are having such a hard time with it. Jennifer Aniston in particular is having a very difficult time with this, because she lost her father too, last year or the year before. And he was a great actor himself, and so she was already dealing with that, and then this happened. And so I know Jennifer Aniston in particular has had a very difficult time accepting his death. They were very close. All the Friends co-stars remained close over the years, and they absolutely love Matthew Perry.
So it's safe to assume then they're probably cheering for someone to be charged secretly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the charges are warranted, I think that they will be grateful that he may receive some level of justice. I can't speak for them.
I'm just wondering if there's a ring
A
involved.
friend of mine.
Like if there's some sort of ketamine underground drug dealing ring that provides celebrities, very lethal drugs if not used properly.
Yes, and there definitely could be. That's a big possibility.
So it might open up a whole can of worms and expose a underground drug dealing network that we've never even knew existed.
Yeah, exactly.
The federal government.
I know you and I aren't able to go out to some bougie underground clinic and get ketamine whenever we feel like it. You know what I mean? So there has to be some kind of privilege here that he's able to even get it in the first place, or someone knows
$1,200 a session. I can't afford that.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Not even just for a story. I mean, I don't know, but yeah. I mean, here's the thing: is like the federal government, which will be good. I do like, if you ever get the chance, and anyone out there that reads federal indictments when it comes to drug dealing and drug dealers and stuff like that, it lays out like a story, like an actual novel. So if an indictment comes down, whoever's responsible for this by providing the drugs, it's going to probably have an elaborate storyline, which is worth reading for sure. Those federal documents in people's indictments is fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they uncovered in the investigation. It'll be interesting, and hopefully will answer a lot of questions that people have.
For sure.
Because I think everyone wants to know how in the world did he have such a high level of ketamine in his system to the point that he passed out and drowned? That's the big question.
Man, because you would think a hot tub makes you even extra relaxed, right? You're already relaxed from ketamine, and then you go into the hot tub, and it's like another level. It's like double the enhancement, right?
And they said it was a secondary cause. The fact that it was the heated water.
Wow. Well, I thank you for the insight, Magnolia. As always, you got more in depth about this than me. I'm on a fact-finding mission. JLR investigates. That's why we investigate, and we pick each other's brains, and also listen to the chat, because a lot of people in this chat have a lot of insight.
Oh, yeah, and I want to point out one comment Rhonda said. She said they sell ketamine all over here in Massachusetts. Every corner store has it. Now, ketamine, by the way, I forgot to mention this. Ketamine, I believe, has been known as, they use it as like a horse tranquilizer.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, so I think that you can get it when at some of these, what do you call them? The feed stores or whatever, where you go to get your supplies for your horses and livestock.
What about at the Kentucky Derby?
The Kentucky Derby?
I mean, I'm just saying, like ketamine at the Kentucky Derby, like get your ketamine.
Yeah. So traditionally, when you think ketamine, you think horse tranquilizer. And that's what most people think when they hear that. But it's not, they're using it now in therapeutic levels to help with depression and anxiety. But like I said, more research and more investigation can't hurt.
Yeah, he was a good actor, man. Too young, 54.
Oh, I love him. I love Matthew Perry. I mean, like, Friends is one of the greatest shows of all time. I've probably seen every episode 3 times. I've gone on like Netflix or whatever and watched it from start to finish.
Was he involved with any other movies? Did he ever do a movie?
He did other movies over the years, but Friends was his obviously his biggest thing, and like you pointed out, they all made a boatload of money from that show. So,
Birds of America. What's that about?
The what?
Birds of America, 2008 film. Numb.
No, I haven't seen that.
Looks like the movie Numb. He gained a lot of weight for that role. Numb?
Well, I mean, one of his issues, he did battle addiction for years, and
Fool's Rush, people are saying.
He would lose and gain weight over the years, even during Friends. he at one time during Friends, he lost a ton of weight. And a lot of that was due to his problems with addiction. So yeah, his weight fluctuated, but that's to be expected with someone dealing with that.
Gotcha. So yeah, we are praying. We'll see what happens. I appreciate it. I'm going to read the actual People magazine report so I can fill people in on what they're reporting about these pending charges. But always appreciate the insight. Everyone follow up on Magnolia. Hit her sub up to her channel. Her bio is in the description of this video. She works side by side and is always in the know.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnolia. Take care. Thank you.
Okay.
Magnolia investigates, everyone. She's great. She has a lot of insight. She always provides things that I don't know. I'm not a drug expert. I know some people in the chat were like, "Hey, you got to learn more about these drugs and stuff like that." I don't do drugs, But it's sad. This is very, very sad. But it looks like we're gonna follow this drug case. Now, this is what People magazine, folks, is reporting. And this is a report that News Nation was quoting. Law enforcement source says arrest should be made after Matthew Perry's death. Here's what could happen. And in this report, folks, it says Matthew Perry's death from acute effects of the prescription drug ketamine has been the source of an ongoing criminal investigation. For 7 months, authorities have examined where the actor got the powerful medication. His autopsy report also determined the level found in his blood was the equivalent to the amount that would be used during general anesthesia. That is a lot, folks. I was under anesthesia a couple weeks ago when I got, when they went through my stomach, when I had stomach issues. And I can tell you, as soon as that anesthesia was administered, it was lights out. I didn't even know it was coming. They just told me to turn to my side. And as soon as they pumped it into the IV, within seconds, I was gone. Law enforcement source close to the investigation told People this week that multiple people should be charged in connection with the probe handling by the LAPD, DEA, and the U.S. Postal Inspectors, which, according to the source, was nearly in its conclusion. The source says the U.S. Attorney's Office will make the ultimate decision on whether or not to press charges. But what charges might someone face and why? Let's see. Since the California branch of the DEA is involved in the investigation, experts say that federal authorities may be looking at distribution of a controlled substance resulting in the death or conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance resulting in the death. Charges following his October 28, 2023 death. This primarily is what is used to charge drug dealers, but it can be used to charge pill mills and doctors as well, says a former federal prosecutor, Nima Ramini. She actually goes around all over the place and talks on media circuits about criminal law. Doctors that are overprescribing and not seeing patients absolutely would be charged under this section. Overprescribing and not seeing patients, absolutely. Ramani says there are different possible sentences for offenders depending on a number of factors. If you distribute drugs and someone dies, there's a different mandatory minimums, he says. It's a she. And it's she, he says he. I thought it was a she. Lest I'm getting this person confused. I'll have to look. I thought this was a female. There's even mandatory life depending on the number of factors. There he is in his younger days. What a great Hollywood star, right? Former CIA and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walter adds that the suspects could be charged with mail fraud. They're looking at the illegal transportation of drugs across state lines to people that they have not been prescribed. Obviously, that's a crime. I think that's probably where they started, and that's most likely the evidence that they will use if that's the case. Those are the charges I could see because I don't see a homicide charge. Though I already told you that the homicide charge could be the enhancement in the actual drug charges. Walter believes this could also be the case where Perry or someone in his inner circle was doctor shopping to multiple physicians in different states, and those doctors could have sent prescriptions across state lines. I don't know if that's the case, but if it's true, that person could also be held accountable just as much as a doctor prescribing drugs across state lines, which is a federal offense. Medical licenses are state issued. I can prescribe something to you if you are physically in my state of licensure,
but I can't write a script to someone in another state, and I can't send any prescription drugs through the mail to a patient in another state. That is a practice not supported by a state license. In May, an investigative source with the LAPD told people that the department had been working on the case since December 2023, and they turned it over to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. The department's public information officer responded no comment to a People's Inquiry on June 25th, just a few days ago. It could take a year or more for charges to be filed. You're dealing with federal agencies, so it takes a while. One case I worked on took 4.5 years. They have to convene a grand jury, and then they present all the evidence, and then that grand jury decides if they want to indict the person or multiple people and press charges. Once indicted, they can make arrest. If not, it goes back to state, and they can decide to proceed or not. There he is. As for the U.S. Postal Service involvement, L.A. defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Caleb Mason tells people that it's possible an investigation found mail that contains illegal drugs. The postal inspectors probably got involved in executing a warrant. Obviously, there was some piece of mail that was found that somebody thought was significant. Mason says the U.S. Attorney's Office runs a task force that investigates and prosecutes overdose cases in the Central District of California that includes Los Angeles County. Anytime there's a death, you are going to have an initial police response and investigation. If someone dies of an accidental drug overdose, there could be an investigation to where the drugs came from. If the initial investigated agency, if it's not the LAPD, they might notify the DEA. They might notify the DA's office. They might notify the U.S. Attorney's Office. The normal practice is to try and do an investigation into why people died. If they died in a way that might be criminal. So are we talking about drugs? Are we talking about drugs that were sent through the mail?
Did he get it through the mail? Did he give it handed to him? Did an out-of-state doctor write the script? A lot of unanswered questions. But we're on it on JLR Investigates, and again, this could all be speculation. This could be a fake news report by People Magazine. This People Magazine report might not be telling the truth, but I've been seeing on lots of, and I just used one of many examples, or I just used one report. There's other reports out there citing that there is some sort of investigation going on in Los Angeles into the drugs. And maybe the death of Matthew Perry. I don't know why I say Michael. Matthew Perry. What do you think? What's your thoughts? So we'll be covering this case, praying for the Morrison family. We say no to drugs on JLR Investigates. And let me just remind people that addiction is real. If you do struggle from addiction, our hearts are with you. Get help. You can get help. There are many people out there that will help you, but it's up to you. It's up to you. You know, and addiction has dire effects, and it can just, it trickles down to family and friends, and it's just horrible, and it's a cycle, and hopefully you can get to help. We pray for you. I have no sympathy whatsoever for drug dealers. I do not think that drug addiction should be criminalized. I don't think people should go to prison or jail because they have a drug addiction. I do feel that drug dealers should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. That's my opinion. What do you think? Let me know what you think. We'll talk soon. JLR Investigates. Thanks for watching, everyone. This particular segment, we cover true crime 24/7, 365. Will there be a crime in this particular case? Stay tuned. We don't know. Have a good day. JLR Investigates. Stay safe.